I think we're good,
Hi,
Elliot.
how are
How are
you?
you?
Good to see you again.
I'm
How's
great. Good to see you. Thank you. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
joining us.
Thanks for the invitation.
Perfect. So it's 6 p.m. right now here in Paris. And so good morning for all the followers in America, especially in Los Angeles, where you come from.
Yes,
I'm sure there are plenty of people who are going to enjoy seeing this.
so it's going to be a nice time.
So, Elliot, yeah, thank you so much for joining us on this program. This is the first one I'm hosting. Thank you to Sabine Rothman for starting the program, and thank you all for joining us on Interiors Academy tonight. So, Elliot, can you tell us a bit about your very interesting career and how you came up to establish yourself in Paris?
Well, so I'm actually a licensed architect in California. I went to architecture school, and after finishing my studies, I decided that I wanted to come to Paris to work for a lady named Andrée Putnam. So I put that into motion. And after working with her for 17 years, I decided I had an opportunity really to start my own company. So I just branched out and did that in a very sort of natural way. It sort of seemed the natural thing to do at the time.
Okay, so your goal was really to work with André Putnam, and then you made it.
Yeah, it was kind of I she came to Los Angeles in 1986 or 87, and I went to a talk that she was giving, and something clicked about the way that she looked at things and the way she was working, and I just knew. And when you know, you know. And then I just put it all together and took a plane and came here. And then take some time
Ama-
after that.
Amazing. What are the most important things you've learned through your time in a studio?
Um, the list is pretty long, but I think one of the most important things
Sure.
is um, is discovery and always staying open and sort of fluid and understanding that no is not an answer, and that when something doesn't work out the way you thought, you can actually turn it around and make it out be something quite nice. So it's they really
That's important.
I think there's also approaches though as a designer you can life approaches to your work. It really informs what you do. It's not something really formal. It's
Mm.
not something that you would say. No one can teach
Okay.
you this in a class.
Okay. So then from there, when did you start your own studio?
Let's see. So I started Elliott Barnes Interiors in 2004, February, and we've been doing for 16 years, basically residential interiors projects. So we did a very large work for La Maison Ruinart, which is the oldest champagne house in the world. We've done a lot of work for Volkswagen Autostadt, did a hotel there. So we're doing all kinds of very different projects. So it's not really one type of work that we're doing.
Yeah. So I was about to ask what is your studio specialty, but uh, clearly you don't really have a studio specialty. It's you're
I think
doing a lot of different projects, right? Residential,
it's better to,
hospitality.
I think it's better to be diverse and to try and do things do as many different projects as you can to find bridges between different projects, because there are always these links between projects. And if there's one thing that I really enjoy doing is working with materials in a different way, or inventing materials that allows you to tell a particular story about a person or about maybe the brand that you're working with. So I was doing a project for AD 2017, and we had this whole idea of looking at leather not as something that covers, but something that is actually structural. So by turning thick leather on its side, you can actually make it structural. So that became a way of telling a certain story. For Ruinart, I had this kind
Mm.
of to use grape leaves to make a wallpaper for a dining room there. So it's a different way to look at things, materials that really belong to a brand or to a person, and then tell a particular story. That really turns me on. I mean, that's the specialty. That's what I like to do.
Yeah. Okay. So being an American in Paris, is it something that is impacting your design? and your practice, or would you now, after all these years, describe yourself as a typical Parisian?
Well, it's not for me to say if I'm a typical Parisian or not. It's for the Parisians who are born here to let me into that club if they would so nicely do that. I really enjoy living in Paris. I consider it my home. Um, uh, I like living between the two countries, but I'm really anchored here. This being said, there are some things, perhaps as an American, that are very close to me that are still very much part of me. And in terms of design, it would be a very sort of practical, it would be a very functional approach to projects. So for me, what's important when I start a project is to get the structure straight, correct, get the circulation flows working, the organizational things, the real sort of nuts and bolts, as we say in America, of a project, get that in place. And once we have that sort of armature together and in place, then we can go and talk about other sort of more design or decorative pieces. Yeah. JB Newton says, of course, I'm Parisian now. Well, thank you for
Okay.
that.
We have Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say. We have many comments of people saying you are actually so Parisian now, and I totally agree. Um, your news actually are as international as your biography. I know you're finishing this year projects in Tokyo, in Düsseldorf, and in the Emirates as well. So can you
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about these experiences? How is it to work with teams so far away, especially in Japan, for example?
Well, so I've worked internationally basically all my career here, whether it's between France and the United States or France and another, other country in the world. Through those experiences, obviously developed relationships, and now for the last 15 years, maybe 10 years, I've had an agent in Japan, and every 2 years, this company called Liaison Design finds projects for me to do. They're usually apartments. Sometimes they are showroom apartments. Other times they're one-offs. And we're doing one now in a city called, well, a district of Tokyo called Toranamon. And that will be end of 2020. And then I have an agent, Aldeviv Ariette Kasparian, who represents me in the Emirates. And we're doing a villa there. We'll start working on that within the next few days. And then I have a very interesting relationship. I've done several projects there, and then the project in Austria because of my relationships with Germany. So in some cases, if there are significant cultural differences, which is the case, clearly in Tokyo and clearly in the Emirates, advise you as you work through the projects there.
Mm. So do you travel to every of these projects?
Not now.
Of course not now,
I usually do.
but
We
usually,
try to, yeah, but we try to keep it at a real reasonable pace. Fortunately now, Valentin, as you know, because technology, we're able to, be on site virtually. We're able to talk devices or whatever they call those, and we can actually travel perhaps a little bit less. But I still think, from a personal point of view, it's very, very important to be able to go on site and see how things are developing, to make micro adjustments if necessary, and also to talk to the people that you're working with. I mean, whatever we think, and no
yeah.
matter how technology develops, this is still an industry and a job about people, right? People getting together, joining forces to do. And so I think that's very important, to be with people.
Yeah, it can create so many misunderstandings actually when you don't see the people like face to face after some time,
Really,
especially with cultural differences.
yes, clearly.
Um, so talking about California, I know you're releasing this year your Ponciana collection for Delisle to Needler Faucher in Los Angeles. The collection was created last year and it will be introduced this year in the US. So how did you meet with Maison Delisle, and what was your inspiration for this creation?
So I've known about the Maison Delisle for, well, almost since my first days in Paris, because at Ecart, we would go and source lighting fixtures there. for certain projects. So I really knew about them. But then when I was doing this project for AD 2017 at La Monnaie de Paris, which is basically the Parisian of the French Mint,
Yeah.
I was given the room for Jean Varenne. I had this idea about doing a project that took as language, kind of the tools of his trade. So one of the tools of his trade is a sort of tool that you use to carve, and I was inspired by this carving handle, and I thought, if I need to make a light fixture, we'll make it out of alabaster. And then I said, well, who can do alabaster and bronze, and as a support. And then I thought about Delisle. It was sort of, I think in a very sort of round way. It's not always very linear. It sort of pops all around at different times. And so I called up Jean Delisle and I said, look, I have this very large fixture to design for this space that will only exist for about 10 days. Would you be interested in, helping me with this? And he said, yes. And then we did that, and that was really fun. And we brought in a guy, Pierre Le Floch, that does all of my leather work to cover his bronze structure in leather. And so he made this fixture, and then and it was really well received during the show. And after that, he said, look, why don't we do a collection? And then we did this collection. And then I know, Neil Le Forcher, because I'm from Los Angeles, and I have tremendous respect for that entire team. And the president of the showrooms, Gina DeWitt, is a friend of mine. And so I said, Gina, meet Jean Delisle, and this is what we're doing. She said, hey, well, why don't we do something together, guys? And that's how it started. So, I like working with my friends. People that I work with, I like to call them my friends, and that's how it all came about.
Yeah.
We have a connection.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Excellent. So, talking further about your project, I know a famous brand of champagne has asked you to create guest suites for them.
Yes.
And I know that you also designed in the past Ruinart headquarters over there in the Champagne region.
Yes.
And it was a very important time in your career. So how do you approach design for such prestigious brands? And especially, does it affect your material choices?
So I'm doing now this work for Bicard Salmon. We're doing these guest suites for them, which is a very small particular project. And again, we did work for Ruinart in the past. These are two very important champagne houses, very, very, very different, of course. And I think the best way to approach is go in with a sort of what I call an empty bag of tricks. I think you really need to go in with no pre-decided ideas. You just need to sort of go and feel it out. And when we started the Ruinart project, I said to the president, everything I need to do your project is here on site. If I need wood, I have your old, food oak casks, your fruit. If I need stone, I have paella. If I need glass, I have your bottle. And so that then became a sort of, a guiding line for the material choices. And that's where we invented the wine paper, which used grape peels for mixed with hemp, because hemp was used by Dom Pérignon as the first muselet for champagne bottles, which held the corks in. So by mixing the hemp as a back with the grape peels, we make a real paper that is really about Ruinart. And it was never done before, and it's the first time. And then working with Bicard Salmon, I'm also working with another material which has to do with sarmon. And sarmon are the branches that you cut off the vines once a year. And we're now developing a material really just for them. So, again, getting back to materials, what I really enjoy doing is developing a material for a brand which allows me to tell a story. And what I really enjoy about that, Valentin, is in a time where people think that they can have everything at any time, when you work with these natural materials, it's only one time a year. So you get it at, for example, wine paper at the end of the harvest, after the grapes, you basically have and with the salmon, you have a little bit longer time, but once that period is passed, you can't make any more until the next year. So I really like this idea of sort of giving myself back to nature again and sort of really getting to the flow with nature, as opposed to, we're always doing the same finish works, variations of the same finish over time. So, that's one aspect that I think is very important about the whole thing. And these Bicard Salmon.
Okay.
for that.
Well, it's very interesting, and I can say by reading the comments that we have a lot of champagne enthusiasts watching us right now.
It's a very
So,
fun.
and there is nothing more French than that. So, following up with what we just heard about your love for these materials and the finishes, which clearly is something very important for you, and your practice is known for using materials very wisely. So, how do you select the artisans you work with? Because, well, they are very important for all materials, of course.
Yes, so it's a very difficult process. It is, because there are a lot of really great artisans out there, of course, and it's a difficult process, because what you need to find is someone who's willing to step out of their confines of comfort, in a sense, and meet you sort of halfway on a playing field, And I step out of my sort of comfort zone, because I want to sort of things, and I ask them to take their knowledge and then meet me in a certain room to do a certain piece of thing. So some people are not comfortable with that.
Yeah, especially if you ask them to reuse materials, as you were saying about your shopping project. That was quite challenging for them.
Sure, because basically that's something that they're going to use as fertilizer, or they're going to use for some other sort of, or they're going to use it to make a fire or whatever. And then you just say, in fact, you can actually turn it in a different direction, and you actually can make something that makes a piece of furniture out of it, or you can make a door, or you can make wallpaper. So all of a sudden you think, the first thing you think is that you're totally crazy, which might be true. But then when they think about it, and you show them that the things that can happen, I think the really good artisans, they reach out, they're ready to stretch out, and I think projects, I've been very fortunate to have projects that allow me to stretch out and invite really the best artisans in France to do work together.
Okay, great. So now I have a question, which I know Sabine and the other correspondent for this program have been asking a lot to our guests, and it's basically, what would be your dream project?
What would be my dream project? Good question. My dream project.
Yes.
Well, I think my dream project would be a project that would allow me to sort of express where I am now, maybe in my head, sort of in my mindset, where I'm thinking, and I'm sort of at a point in my life where spirituality is very important to me. This sort of calmness of reflection is very important to me. I'm very early in the morning, because it's so quiet, and the space of the morning is so fantastic, and the light is so fantastic. So I think if I were to make a dream project, it would probably be some kind of chapel. A very small chapel for somebody would be very.
A chapel.
Yeah. Chapel.
Would it be in the city, in the countryside? How do you picture it?
Well, if I don't know. I think it could be anywhere. I'm more of a kind of water guy, so I'm not really about the countryside.
Okay.
Also a city guy, so maybe it could be in the city. It could be this: you walk into a space and you're totally disconnected from urbanity, and you enter into a whole sort of really protected space. And sort of creating this kind of protected space at a spiritual level is something that I would find really interesting.
Okay, so city and water, you might have to build it in Los Angeles, actually.
That might not be a bad idea.
Okay, so if anyone has a free space in Malibu for a chapel right now, let us know.
Please call me.
Elliott, Elliott, our relationship with our home space is changing more and more, and we've seen that in the past month, who just actually accelerated something which was already trending. What shifts do you see happening in the way we live and in the way we use our homes?
So I think I think it's a little bit early to draw conclusions, and I think whatever we say is clearly not the end. It's not a definitive sort of situation. I think it's more of a sort of a momentary vision of where we are now in terms of how we use our spaces, and I think that there's because of these devices, really the sort of line between our personal space and our private space is basically non-existent, right? I sort of live in the space in which I work because it creates a very fluid atmosphere for me. So I think what we will start to see is that the idea of a desk as a sort of formal piece of furniture is going to completely go away. I think that people will start building livable, workable spaces, and or at least constructing livable, workable spaces where at one point maybe you're writing a report, and then the next moment you're receiving friends. And so I think there will be this sort of fluidity between a work environment and a living environment. And I think we will no longer talk about work environments and living environments, but just about livable environments, right? Environments where we can express ourselves.
So, is that a good thing? How are people going to be able to separate things?
Oh,
Because of course, if we're doing a job that we love, like we both do, I hope, it's a marvelous thing. But if not, and you're constantly invaded by your work, it can be tricky.
well, it's a very that's a very personal situation, I would say, right? I mean, there are clearly some people who live well with it, and there are clearly some people who really want to do things differently. And I think in that case, if people want to do things differently, they will probably still have a distinct environment in which they will then do this thing called work, and another environment in which they will live their life. But I think we will start to see less and less this idea of I get up in the morning and I go someplace to go to work, right? I think that's kind of over. You might get up and work for 10 minutes, or an hour or 2 hours, and then go off and do something else. And I think that's where kind of things are going. Now that's obviously perhaps closely related to people like us who are in the the design industry, because we have that type of flexibility. There are obviously other people, other professionals where it's a little bit different,
Mm. Okay, thank you. And I have a last question about French design. Um, do you see French design evolving these days, and what do you think its future made of?
Well, if I knew what the future of French design was, I would probably change jobs because I'm definitely not in the right job. French design is it's evolving. It's becoming more craftsman based, even more than it was when I first arrived here. People are really investing themselves in exploring old ways of making things and bringing that to the forefront. One thing I do see happening a lot with French designers when we're working abroad, and abroad could be in a different country in Europe, then it could be half around the world, is that it used to be a situation where we would design things in France and then we would ship them over to the country, and it would be the sort of French thing in a foreign space. Now, what French designers are doing more and more, at least what I'm seeing, is that we're taking kind of know-how and our sensibilities, this what they call the French touch, going to places, and it could be the Emirates, it could be Tokyo, and saying I want to make this wall this way. Let's talk to the local artisan about doing that. And so all of a sudden you're bringing your French experience and your French vision into contact with a local experience and a local vision to make a project that is really then about that place. And I think that's a real solid direction that French designers are taking now.
Yeah, I totally agree. Actually, in my experience as well, French used to be always like, we have the best artisans in the world. We don't need anybody else when we're going to work. We just bring everything with us. And now it's much more about respect. And I know it's really interesting actually when you get to learn about so many of the know-hows in the place you travel to. So that's very interesting, and it's a very good point to finish.
There's some really, I mean, really, Valentin, there's some amazing artisans from, from Los Angeles to South Korea to, I mean, to places that we can't even think about. There's some really, really amazing things being done, and it's good to take part.
Absolutely. Absolutely, and even more now with the craft movement in many countries like the US.
Clearly, and it's a good thing, And I think it used to be that there wasn't a lot of value attached to being a craftsman, but now there's a tremendous amount of value as as parents saying, "Oh, you want to be a woodworker? Well, that's a great thing." You want to be a chef. Remember, if you wanted to be a chef 20 years ago, they'd think, "Really, you want to be a chef?" But now, if you want to be a chef, or if you want to be a barista, that's a great thing, right? Because you're really doing something for someone else. You're really providing this service for people. And I think that's a very noble thing to do.
Mm. And it got to do as well with what we were talking earlier, the fact that our way of life are evolving, and a lot of people are maybe tired of their office job and want to do something more interesting as well.
We had a lot of calls to change people's spaces right now because things are really changing, and let's hope it continues, in a very positive way, for positive reasons.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you so much for this talk, Elliott. I saw a comment actually talking about a prayer room you made in London already, and apparently it was very appreciated. So that was it. And well, so thank you so much, and have a great evening in Paris.
Okay, thanks a lot, Valentin. Thanks for your call. See you guys. Take care. Be safe.
Bye. You too.